The crystal halls of the Imperial Senate stretched endlessly before her. Generala Yuna walked slowly, her footsteps echoing against the polished floors that had been built long before humanity had reached the stars. She was old, 947 years old, to be exact. Her body was kept young by the sacred treaty itself, a gift from the Empire that made her immortal as long as peace remained between their peoples. She remembered when she first walked these halls. She had been only 47 then, a young diplomat sent to beg for mercy. Humanity had just lost the first contact war. Earth had burned. Billions had died. The Empire could have ended humanity forever. But Yuna had convinced them to stop. She had given them the treaty, and in return, humans would never raise weapons again. That was 900 years ago. Now she walked with her honor guard behind her. Hana, her great-granddaughter, carried the ceremonial sword that had no edge. It was a symbol, nothing more. Beside Hana walked Lieutenant Taiho, a young man of only 25 who had never seen war. No living human had seen war. Yuna had made sure of that. The Imperial Senate chamber was a massive dome made of living crystal that changed colors with the mood of its masters. Today it glowed a deep red. Yuna noticed this immediately. Red meant danger. Red meant blood. She stopped walking. "Generala?" Hana asked. "Is something wrong?" Yuna looked at her descendant. Hana had her grandmother's eyes, the same eyes that had watched Earth burn all those centuries ago. She wanted to tell her to run. She wanted to tell her everything. But there was no time. High Admiral Vosk stepped out from behind a crystal pillar. He was tall and thin, with gray skin and eyes that held no warmth. The Imperial species had many names for themselves, but humans simply called them the Makers, because they claimed to have made the galaxy what it was. "Generala Yuna," Vosk said. His voice was cold like space itself. "The Senate has been expecting you." "I was not summoned to the Senate," Yuna replied carefully. "I came to discuss trade agreements with the Colonial Office." Plans change. Behind Vosk, Imperial guards emerged from the shadows. 20 of them. 30. 50. They carried plasma rifles pointed directly at Yuna and her small escort. Taiho moved forward, his hand reaching for a weapon he did not have. Humanity had no weapons. That was the treaty. That was the price of peace. "Stand down, Lieutenant," Yuna ordered. Her voice was calm, almost peaceful. She had known this day would come. She had always known. "Generala, we cannot." I said stand down. The young man stopped. His hands shook with rage and fear, but he obeyed. He'd been trained to obey. All humans had been trained to obey. Vosk smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. The Senate has decided that the treaty has served its purpose. Humanity has grown too numerous. Your technology advances too quickly. Your people breed like insects and spread across the stars like a disease. We have kept every term of the treaty, Yuna said. We have no weapons, no warships. We have done nothing to threaten the Empire. Your existence threatens the Empire. Vosk walked closer, his boots clicking against the crystal floor. 900 years ago, we should have finished what we started. We showed mercy, and look what happened. 18 colonies, 40 billion humans. You multiply faster than we can count. Yuna understood. She had always understood. The treaty was never meant to be permanent. It was only meant to delay until the Empire decided humanity was no longer useful. Now that day had come. She looked at Hana, then at Taiho, so young, so innocent. They had never known hunger or war or fear. She had given them 900 years of peace so they could grow strong without suffering. Now she had to give them one final gift. Lieutenant Taiho, she said quietly, take Hana and run. Get to the docking bay. Take my shuttle. The codes are in my quarters. I will not leave you, Hana cried. You will leave me, and you will live. That is my final order as Generala of humanity. Vosk laughed. Let them run. Where will they go? We have already surrounded human space. By tomorrow, Earth will burn again. This time, there will be no treaty. This time, there will be no survivors. Yuna turned to face him. She was old, so old, but in that moment she stood tall like the young woman who had bargained for humanity's survival 9 centuries ago. Do you know why I came here alone today, Admiral? Vosk frowned. Because you are foolish. Because I needed to be sure. She smiled, and there was something dangerous in that smile. For 900 years, I hoped I was wrong about you. I hoped the Empire would choose peace forever. I hoped my children and grandchildren and all the generations after them would never have to know what I knew. She reached into her robe and pulled out a small device. It looked like nothing more than a simple communicator, the kind used for basic messages. But I prepared anyway. She pressed the button. Across the galaxy, on every human world, in every bunker and basement and hidden place, ancient machines began to wake up. Defense computers that had been sleeping for 900 years received her signal. The Generala protocol had been activated. Vosk saw her press the button. He screamed an order. The Imperial Guards raised their weapons. Yuna spoke one last time, and her words were broadcast across every human world, to every human being in the galaxy. Remember what I taught you. Remember what you are. The plasma fire struck her. She fell slowly, like a leaf in autumn, her ancient body finally finding rest after 9 centuries of vigilance. Taiho caught her before she hit the ground. Her blood stained his uniform, warm and red and human. Hana screamed, a sound of pure grief that echoed through the crystal halls. But the guards did not fire again. They were confused, looking at each other, waiting for orders. In that moment of hesitation, Taiho grabbed Hana and ran. They ran through corridors they did not know, following paths that seemed to appear in Taiho's mind without explanation. He did not question it. He simply ran, carrying himself and Hana toward the docking bay while the alarms began to wail behind them. On Earth, in a bunker 3 kilometers beneath Seoul, a young technician named Jiwoo stared at her screen. She had been monitoring weather satellites. It was a boring job. Nothing ever happened. Now something was happening. The ancient defense computers, machines so old that no one remembered who built them, were waking up. Screens that had been dark for centuries were flickering to life. A message appeared on every display across the planet, on every colony, on every human device in the galaxy. Generala Protocol activated. Jiwoo did not know what the Generala Protocol was. No one did. It had been buried in the oldest files, classified beyond classification, hidden so deep that most people thought it was a myth. But it was real. It had always been real. And now humanity was about to learn what their beloved Generala had truly been doing for 900 years. She had been preparing them for war. Hana could not stop crying. She sat in the small shuttle, holding her ancestors' blood-stained robe, while Taiho flew through space like a madman. Behind them, Imperial ships were chasing. Ahead of them, there was only the darkness of the void. "We are going to die," she whispered. Taiho did not answer. He was too busy flying, his hands moving across controls he had never used before. And yet, somehow, he knew exactly what to do. Every button, every switch, every maneuver came to him like he had been doing this his entire life. He did not question it. There was no time to question anything. The shuttle reached an unmonitored gate, a jump point so old that the Empire had forgotten about it. Taiho did not know how he knew it was there. He just knew. He activated the jump drive, and the stars stretched into lines, and then they were gone, leaving their pursuers behind in the darkness. 3 days later, they reached Earth. The planet looked the same as it always had. Blue and green and white, floating in the black. But something was different. When they entered orbit, they saw ships. Thousands of ships. Ships that had never existed before, rising from hidden places in the asteroid belt like ghosts awakening from a long sleep. "What is happening?" Hana asked Dot before Taiho could answer. A voice came through the communicator. It was a woman's voice, calm and warm and familiar. "Welcome home, children," Hana gasped. She knew that voice. Everyone knew that voice. Generala? Not quite. The voice carried a hint of sadness. "I am grandmother. I am the artificial mind that controls the sleeping fleet, but I speak with the voice of Generala. Yuna because she recorded me herself. 900 years ago." Taiho stared at the screen showing the massive fleet. 10,000 warships. Real warships with real weapons. Hidden in the asteroids for 9 centuries. Impossible. The treaty had forbidden humanity from building any weapons at all. "She broke the treaty," he said quietly. "No," Grandmother replied. "She never signed the treaty. The document that bears her name was a copy. The real Yuna spent 900 years preparing humanity for this day. She hoped it would never come. She prayed that the Empire would keep its word. But she knew, in her heart, that they would not." The shuttle landed in Seoul. They were met by soldiers in armor that looked brand new, carrying weapons that hummed with power. These were not Imperial weapons. These were human weapons, designed in secret, built in hidden factories, stored in bunkers that no one knew existed. Chancellor Dong-yun was waiting for them. He was a young man, only 60 years old, and his face showed the shock that everyone felt. He had been a leader of peace. He had never imagined he would lead a war. "Fleet Commander Taiho," he said. "Admiral Sujin is waiting for you in the command center." Taiho blinked. "Fleet Commander? I am just a lieutenant." "Not anymore. The Generala Protocol has activated your true rank. You were always meant to be a fleet commander. You just did not know it." They walked through the underground base, a facility so large that it made the Imperial Senate look small. Everywhere Taiho looked, he saw humans waking up to who they really were. Teachers who discovered they were weapons experts. Farmers who found they knew how to fly warships. Children who realized the games they had played were actually combat simulations. Yuna had done this. For 900 years, she had hidden military training inside everything humanity did. The education system taught tactics disguised as puzzles. The fitness programs were combat exercises wearing masks. The entertainment programs were battle simulations, pretending to be games. Humanity had been training for war their entire lives. They just never knew it. Admiral Sujin stood before a holographic map of the galaxy. She was a small woman, 70 years old, with gray hair and kind eyes. Until yesterday, she had been a ceremonial commander who spent most of her time attending parades. She had never fired a weapon. Now she understood that she was a tactical genius. "The Empire has declared total war," she said calmly. "They are moving toward our colonies. They believe we have no ability to fight. They believe we will surrender or die." She pressed a button and the map changed. 10,000 green dots appeared in the asteroid belt. "The sleeping fleet. They are wrong." Taiho looked at the map. He understood it immediately, as if he had been reading military maps his whole life. Which, he realized, he had been. Every puzzle, every game, every simulation. It had all been preparation. "We need to protect the colonies," he said. "The Empire will attack the weakest points first." "Correct." Sujin smiled at him. It was a strange smile, sad and proud at the same time. You understand faster than most. Yuna chose well when she selected you. Selected me? She selected all of us. Every person in this room. Every soldier in this base. Every human being alive today. She watched over us for 9 centuries, guiding us, preparing us, making sure we would be ready when this day came. Hannah stepped forward. She had stopped crying. In her hands, she still held Yuna's blood-stained robe, but now she held it like a flag, not a shroud. What do we do now? She asked. Grandmother's voice came through the speakers. Now, you fight. The Generala gave you 900 years of peace so you could grow strong. So you could become something the Empire never expected. She believed in you. All of you. And now it is time to prove that her belief was not misplaced. The command center was silent. Every person there understood what was happening. They were about to go to war against an empire that controlled 12,000 worlds. They had only 18. They were outnumbered 1,000 to 1, but they had something the Empire did not have. They had 900 years of preparation. They had weapons the Empire had never seen. They had training that the Empire could not imagine. And they had the memory of Generala Yuna, who had given everything so they could have this chance. Chancellor Do Yoon walked to the center of the room. He was shaking, but his voice was steady. Broadcast to all human worlds, he ordered. Tell them the truth. Tell them about the Generala Protocol. Tell them about the sleeping fleet. Tell them that our beloved Generala did not abandon us. She prepared us. And now we will make her proud. The message went out across the galaxy. On every human world, people watched their screens and listened to the truth they had never been told. They learned that their peace had been built on a secret. They learned that their Generala had loved them so much that she spent 9 centuries preparing for their darkest day. And they learned that they were not helpless. Farmers and teachers and builders. They were soldiers. They had always been soldiers. And now, at last, it was time to fight in the Imperial Palace on Throne Prime. High Admiral Vosk received reports of the human fleet. He read them once, then read them again. 10,000 warships. Advanced weapons. Trained crews. Impossible, he said, but it was not impossible. It was simply unexpected. The Empire had underestimated humanity for 900 years. They had believed the treaty made humans weak. They had believed that peace made humans soft. They were about to learn how wrong they had been. The sleeping fleet moved out from the asteroid belt, their engines bright against the darkness of space. At its head flew the flagship, newly awakened and hungry for battle. Its name was written across its hull in letters of fire. Yuna's promise. The war had begun. The Imperial 7th Fleet was the pride of the Empire. 500 dreadnoughts, each one the size of a small city, each one carrying enough firepower to destroy a planet. They had conquered 1,000 worlds. They had never lost a battle. Admiral Sujin watched them approach on her tactical screen. She sat in the command chair of Yuna's promise, surrounded by officers who had discovered their true training only days ago. Around her, 2,000 human warships waited in formation near Titan's Gate, the jump point that led to Earth. They outnumber us 4 to 1 in terms of firepower, said her tactical officer, a young woman named Minji, who had been a schoolteacher 1 week ago. Their dreadnoughts are 3 times the size of our largest ships. Size is not everything, Sujin replied calmly. What about speed? Minji checked her readings. We are faster. Much faster. Our engines are completely different from anything in the Imperial database. And weapons? Also different. Our plasma cannons have twice the range of theirs. Our shields use a frequency they have never seen. Sujin smiled. Yuna had been busy during those 900 years. While the Empire believed humanity was building farm equipment and entertainment systems, They had actually been developing weapons technology that left the Empire in the dust. Every civilian research project had a secret military application. Every medical advancement had a battlefield use. The Empire had given humanity peace. Humanity had used that peace to become something terrifying. All ships, Sujin commanded. Execute pattern Unit 7. The human fleet moved like a single creature. They had practiced these patterns in simulations disguised as games, played by children who thought they were having fun. Now those children were adults, and the games were real. The Imperial 7th Fleet expected humans to fight the way the Empire fought, head-on, in straight lines, trading blows until one side collapsed. That was how civilized species conducted war. Humanity did not fight that way. The human ships split into dozens of smaller groups, each one moving in a different direction. They swooped around the Imperial formation like birds around a slow-moving beast. Their weapons fired from angles the Imperial computers could not predict. Their shields flickered on and off in patterns that confused Imperial sensors. The first Imperial dreadnought exploded 12 minutes into the battle. High Admiral Vosk watched from Throne Prime, receiving reports in real time. His face grew paler with each passing hour. One dreadnought destroyed. Then 5, then 20. How? He demanded. They are farmers. They are cattle. His aide shook his head. Their tactics are unlike anything in our records. Their weapons are more advanced than ours. Their ships are faster. And their crews. He paused, searching for words. Their crews fight like they have been training for this their entire lives. That is impossible. The treaty forbade. The treaty was a lie. The aide pulled up intelligence reports. We have intercepted human communications. They call it the Generala Protocol. Everything we believed about human society was false. Their games were combat training. Their education was military preparation. Their Generala spent 9 centuries building an army we never saw. Vosk slammed his fist against his desk. Send reinforcements. Send the 8th Fleet. Send everything we have. But it was too late for the 7th Fleet. Admiral Sujin watched the last Imperial dreadnought break apart. The battle had lasted 6 hours. 500 Imperial warships had been reduced to floating debris. The human fleet had lost only 43 ships. It was a victory beyond anything anyone had expected. On Earth, people watched the battle recordings and cried. They cried for their lost ships, for their fallen soldiers, for the peace that was gone forever. But they also cried with pride. For 900 years, they had believed themselves to be weak. Now they knew the truth. They had never been weak. They had been waiting. Chancellor Dohyun prepared his broadcast. He stood before the camera, dressed in the simple gray uniform that Yuna had designed centuries ago. It had no medals, no decorations. It was meant to show that humanity did not celebrate war, but they would not run from it either. Citizens of the Empire, he began. His message was sent to every world, human and imperial alike. You have heard what happened at Titan's Gate. Your 7th Fleet is destroyed. Your invasion of human space has failed. He paused, letting the words sink in across 12,000 worlds. We did not want this war. For 900 years, we kept the peace. We disarmed. We submitted. We trusted that the Empire would honor its promises. And in return, you murdered our Generala. You declared our extermination. You proved that peace with the Empire is impossible. His voice grew stronger. So hear me now. Hear the new doctrine of humanity. We call it proportional response. You killed one of us. We will take one of yours. You destroyed one of our ships. We will destroy one of yours. You bombed one of our cities. We will bomb one of yours. He leaned forward, his eyes hard. And if you try to exterminate us, we will exterminate you first." The broadcast ended. Across the Empire, millions of beings watched in shock. This was not how conquered species were supposed to behave. They were supposed to beg. They were supposed to surrender. They were supposed to accept their fate. Humanity was doing none of those things. Hana commanded her own ship now, the Swift Arrow. She had discovered that she was not just a ceremonial honor guard. She was a born combat pilot, her reflexes faster than almost anyone in the fleet. Yuna had been preparing her bloodline for generations. Her task force, the First Strike Fleet, jumped to Imperial space. They did not attack military targets. Instead, they surrounded the breadbasket worlds, the agricultural planets that fed the Empire's core systems. "We are not here to destroy you," Hana broadcast to the terrified planetary governors. "We are here to show you what we can do. Your food supplies are now under our control. If the Empire attacks our colonies, your people will starve." It was cruel. It was ruthless. It was exactly what Yuna had trained them to do. The Empire had believed that 900 years of peace had made humanity soft. They had believed that humans had forgotten how to be dangerous. They had believed that the species they had nearly destroyed was no longer a threat. They were learning how wrong they were. Taiho received reports from across human space. The colonies were mobilizing. Every factory was building weapons. Every shipyard was producing warships. Every citizen was remembering their training. "The Empire has 12,000 worlds," he said to Admiral Sujin. "We have 18. How long can we hold them off?" Sujin looked at the tactical map. The war was only beginning. The Empire would send more fleets. They would use every weapon they had. They would try to crush humanity before humanity grew too strong. "Long enough," she replied. "The Generala did not prepare us to survive for a few months. She prepared us to win." Outside the viewport, the stars burned cold and bright. Somewhere out there, the Empire was gathering its forces. Somewhere out there, the next battle was being planned. Humanity would be ready. They had been ready for 900 years. 1 year had passed since Yuna's death. 1 year of war. 1 year of fire and blood and sacrifice. The galaxy had changed. The Empire still controlled 12,000 worlds, but it could not supply them. Human raiders struck their cargo ships with perfect precision. Human spies fed information to the fleet commanders. Human technology, advancing faster than anyone could track, produced new weapons every month. The Empire was bleeding. Slowly, but surely, it was bleeding. Taiho stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dawn. He was no longer the young lieutenant who had watched Yuna fall. War had hardened him. His eyes held a weight that came from sending people to die, from making choices that determined the fate of worlds. He was fleet commander now. Not by choice, but by necessity. Grandmother had selected him for this role before he was born. Yuna had watched over his family for generations, guiding them, shaping them, preparing them for this moment. "Report," he ordered his tactical officer. A veteran named Junho pulled up the holographic display. "Our scouts have confirmed the intelligence. The Empire is holding approximately 6 million humans in detention centers across 3 planets near Throne Prime. They are using them as hostages." Taiho's jaw tightened. When the war began, millions of humans had been living in Imperial space. Workers, traders, diplomats. They had been rounded up immediately, thrown into camps, used as leverage. For a year, humanity had been unable to reach them. That was about to change. What about their defense fleet? The combined Imperial home fleet, everything they have left. 15,000 warships guarding Throne Prime and the surrounding systems. Taiho looked at his own fleet. 3,000 ships. They were outnumbered 5-1. "We go anyway." John-Ho did not question the order. None of them did anymore. They had learned that human tactics could overcome any odds. They had learned that surprise and speed and creativity were more powerful than mere numbers. And they had learned that some things were worth dying for. The human fleet jumped into Imperial space. They appeared without warning, emerging from hidden routes that the Empire did not know existed. Yuna had mapped these paths centuries ago, preparing for exactly this moment. The Battle of Throne Prime began. It was the largest space battle in galactic history. Human ships swarmed around Imperial dreadnoughts like wolves around bears. They struck and retreated, never staying in one place long enough to be caught. The Imperial commanders were furious. They ordered their ships to pursue, but the humans were always faster. They commanded their weapons to fire, but the humans were already gone. They called for reinforcements, but there were no reinforcements left. On the bridge of Eternal Dawn, Taiho watched the battle unfold. He had studied this fight for months, planning every move, anticipating every Imperial response. Yuna had trained him for this, even though he had never met her. Every simulation he had played as a child, every puzzle he had solved in school, every competition he had won, they had all been preparation for this day. "Break through the defensive line," he ordered. "All rescue ships, proceed to the detention planets." 100 transports, protected by 500 warships, dove through the gaps in the Imperial formation. They were heading for the camps where millions of humans were being held. High Admiral Vosk watched from the Imperial Palace. He had failed to stop the human advance. He had failed to predict their tactics. He had failed at everything he had tried for the past year. Now he was about to fail at his final task. "Order the guards to execute the prisoners," he commanded. His aide hesitated. "All 6 million of them?" "All of them. If we cannot use them as hostages, they are worthless." But the order never reached the camps. Hana led the ground assault. Her dropship landed in the middle of the largest detention facility, surrounded by fire and chaos. She was not the scared girl who had watched her ancestor die. She was a warrior now, her movements sharp and deadly. "Cut the communications," she shouted. "Disable their command network." Her soldiers moved like water, flowing through the facility, disabling systems, neutralizing guards. They had trained for this mission specifically. Every building, every corridor, every security system, they knew it all because human spies had spent months gathering intelligence. The detention camps fell one by one. 6 million humans, starving and beaten but alive, were loaded onto rescue ships. Children who had been born in captivity saw the sky for the first time. Elders who had given up hope found it again. Hana found something else in the chaos. Deep in the Imperial archives, buried in classified files, she discovered the truth about the treaty. 900 years ago, the Empire had never intended to honor the peace. The treaty was meant to delay humanity's destruction until the Empire could position its forces. They had planned to exterminate humans all along, and Yuna had known. She had discovered this secret centuries ago. She had spent her entire immortal life preparing humanity for a betrayal she hoped would never come. Every day, she had smiled and acted the role of peaceful diplomat. Every night, she had worked in secret, building the army that would save her people. Hana held the files in her hands, tears streaming down her face. Her ancestor had carried this burden for 900 years. She had known the truth and told no one, protecting humanity's innocence while preparing for their survival. "I understand now," Hana whispered. "I understand everything." The battle was ending. The Imperial home fleet was broken, scattered across the system in pieces. Taiho walked through the crystal halls where Yuna had died, leading liberation forces to the last pockets of resistance. They found Vosk hiding in his command center, surrounded by guards who had already surrendered. "How?" Vosk demanded. His arrogance was gone, replaced by genuine confusion. You were nothing. You were cattle waiting to be slaughtered. How did you become this? Taiho looked at him. He remembered the stories Yuna had told, broadcast across human space for centuries. Stories about courage and sacrifice and hope. Stories about never giving up, no matter how dark things seemed. Our Generala taught us, he replied. Every story she told for 900 years, every lesson, every game, she was preparing us. She knew you would betray us. She knew we would need to fight. And she made sure we would be ready. Vosk laughed bitterly. One human woman, defeated the Empire. No, Taiho shook his head. She gave us the tools. We defeated you ourselves. The rescue fleet jumped back to human space, carrying 6 million survivors. They were met by cheering crowds, by tears of joy, by embraces that had been delayed for a year. On Earth, Chancellor Do-hyun watched the reunions and allowed himself a moment of hope. The war was not over. The Empire still had thousands of worlds. But humanity had proven something today that they could strike anywhere. They could reach anyone. They could not be stopped. In her ship, surrounded by the files she had recovered, Hana began to write. She would tell the true story of Generala Yuna, not the peaceful diplomat the galaxy thought they knew, but the secret warrior who had spent 9 centuries preparing for the fight of humanity's life. The galaxy needed to know the truth, and the truth would change everything. 5 years had passed since Yuna's assassination. The galaxy was unrecognizable. The Empire had shattered, not just from human attacks, but from rebellion within. When the other species saw humanity fighting back and winning, they remembered their own grievances. The Empire had ruled through fear for 10,000 years. Now that fear was broken. 100 species rose up. Worlds that had been conquered generations ago declared independence. Fleets that had served the Empire turned against their masters. The old order was dying, faster than anyone could have predicted. Throne Prime was burning when humanity arrived. Not from human weapons, but from the fires of internal revolution. The crystal halls of the Imperial Senate, where Yuna had fallen, were shattered and dark. Taiho walked through the ruins with Hana beside him. They were both older now. War had aged them in ways that years alone never could. But they had survived. Humanity had survived. This is where she died, Hana said quietly. The spot where Yuna had fallen was marked by a simple stone someone had placed there. Even in the chaos of revolution, someone had remembered. This is where we were born, Taiho replied. The moment they killed her, they created us. Everything we've done, everything we've become, it started here. Chancellor Do-hyun arrived with his diplomatic team. He was no longer young. 5 years of war had turned his hair gray and carved lines into his face. But his eyes still held the hope that had guided humanity through its darkest hours. The representatives are assembling, he said. 3,000 species have agreed to attend. They want peace, Taiho. Real peace. This time. Taiho looked at the ruins around them. He thought of all the battles he had fought, all the soldiers he had lost, all the sacrifices that had brought them to this moment. Was peace really possible? After everything? What about the Imperials? He asked. Their government has collapsed. The surviving leaders are in custody. The species that made up the Empire are splitting into independent nations. They are finished. Hana stepped forward. Then, we need to make sure this never happens again. We need to build something better than what came before. They worked for months, negotiating with thousands of species, addressing centuries of grievances, building a framework for a new galactic order. It was harder than any battle Taiho had ever fought. In war, the enemy was clear. In peace, everyone had different needs and fears and hopes. But slowly, painfully, the new treaty took shape. It would not be like the old treaty. The old treaty had been built on lies and hidden agendas. The new one would be built on transparency and mutual accountability. No species would dominate. No empire would rise again. All would stand together as equals, bound by law, protected by collective strength. The day of the signing arrived. They held the ceremony on Throne Prime, in a great plaza that had been cleared of rubble and rebuilt with materials from 100 different worlds. 3,000 delegations attended, representing more species than had ever gathered in one place before. Hannah stood at the podium. She had been chosen to speak for humanity, not because she was the most powerful, but because she carried Yuna's legacy. She was the descendant who had held the old Generala as she died, the warrior who had led the rescue of millions, the archivist who had revealed the truth of Yuna's sacrifice. She wore simple clothes, not the uniform of a soldier or the robes of a diplomat. She wore the clothes of an ordinary human because that was what Yuna had always wanted. She had not prepared humanity to become conquerors. She had prepared them to survive as ordinary people in a dangerous universe. My ancestor gave humanity 900 years of peace, Hannah began. She knew it would not last forever. She knew that one day we would have to fight for our survival. But she also knew something else. She knew that we were capable of more than just survival. We were capable of building something better. She paused, looking out at the sea of alien faces. Some were species that had fought against humanity. Others were species that had joined their cause. All of them were here now, listening, hoping. The Empire believed that power came from domination. They believed that the strong should rule the weak, that some species were better than others. That peace was just a pause between conquests. They were wrong. She gestured to the treaty document displayed on massive screens around the plaza. This treaty is different. It does not declare one species above another. It does not allow empires to form. It creates a true federation where every world has a voice, where every species is protected, where strength is used to defend the weak rather than exploit them. Taiheo watched from the crowd. He was wearing civilian clothes now. He had resigned his commission the day the empire fell. He had fought because he had to, not because he wanted to. Now that the fighting was over, he wanted to remember what it meant to be something other than a soldier. His daughter sat on his shoulders. She was 3 years old, born during the darkest days of the war. Her name was Yuna, like so many children born in those years. When she was older, he would tell her about the woman she was named after. He would tell her about the sacrifice that had saved their people. Admiral Sujin sat nearby, her uniform exchanged for civilian clothes as well. She had spent her entire adult life preparing for a war she never knew was coming. Now, at last she could rest. The tactical genius, who had never fired a weapon before the war, had become the greatest military commander in human history. And she had given it all up the moment peace became possible. Hannah continued her speech. Yuna's dream was never just peace for humanity. It was peace for everyone. The Empire could not give us that. So we built it ourselves. She signed the treaty, pressing her hand against the biolock that would record her DNA, alongside 3,000 other signatures. One by one, the other delegations followed. Species that had been enemies for millennia stood together and made the same promise. No more empires. No more conquests. No more wars of extermination. A new age had begun. After the ceremony, Hannah walked to the memorial that had been built at the center of the plaza. It was a statue of Generala Yuna, carved from white stone brought from Earth. The artist had captured her perfectly standing tall, her hands extended in peace, her eyes looking toward the stars. The inscription read, "She gave us peace so we could learn to be strong. She gave us strength so we could choose peace." Hannah touched the cold stone, remembering the warm hands that had held her as a child, remembering the stories her ancestor had told, remembering the final words broadcast across the galaxy. "We did it," she whispered. "We built what you dreamed of. It is not perfect. Nothing ever is. But it is better than what came before. And we will keep making it better, generation after generation, until the stars themselves grow dark." She felt a hand on her shoulder. Taiho stood beside her, little Yuna still riding on his shoulders. The child was reaching toward the statue, fascinated by the stone face. "Who is that?" the girl asked. "That is your namesake," Taiho said. "She was the bravest person who ever lived. She protected our people for a very long time." "Did she fight bad guys?" "She did something harder than fighting. She prepared us so we could fight when we needed to, and choose peace when we could." He looked at Hana. "She gave everything so we could have this moment." The sun was setting over Throne Prime, painting the sky in colors that no human had seen before the war. Once, this world had been the heart of an empire that wanted to destroy them. Now it was the capital of a federation that included them. Humanity had taken its place among the stars, not as cattle, not as conquerors, as equals. Hana looked up at the statue one last time. She could almost see Yuna smiling, satisfied at last after 9 centuries of vigilance. The old Generala could finally rest, and her children would carry her legacy forward into whatever future awaited them in the vast darkness between the stars. The war was over. Peace had begun.